Ahead on WRAL Triangle and Two, we'll tell you the top players to watch at this week's ACC Baseball Tournament at the DBAP in Durham. We'll also tell you about Panthers OTAs and the biggest storylines there as the offseason rolls around. But we will start today's episode, a must-win game tonight, Game 3, Carolina Hurricanes, Florida Panthers. Good afternoon, I'm Mark Bergin, joined as always by Luis Fernandez. Luis, first thoughts ahead of tonight's game down in Florida.
It's a must win. Yeah, for sure. When you look at it, even in the current situation at 2-0 or down 2-0, the home teams that go down 2-0 in the first two games of a series got about a 19% chance to come through there. It's really not a good spot for the Canes to be in. Teams that go down 3-0, only 4 teams have ever come back from that. Most recently, the Kings in 2014. So it's not a good position, but it's so frustrating for the Hurricanes because you hear head coach Rod Brind'Amour, he's been saying a lot during the press conferences. You hear the players talk about it. They are like 2 plays away from being up 2-0. It's just the margins in the playoff are so small. But it has fallen on the exact wrong side for the Canes just about every opportunity so far in these first 2 games.
Luis, I'm of the thought process tonight's game is the biggest of Brind'Amour's career, his coaching career. I'll say maybe you want to say 2019, where they're in the conference final against the Boston Bruins, and then the Bruins ended up losing in the Stanley Cup Finals to the St. Louis Blues. But the margin for error, that's spot on. You hit the nail on the head, because while there have only 4 teams that have come back in the playoffs from a 3-0 deficit, none of those have happened in the round before the final. So if the Canes go down 3-0, you're dealing with history. 46-0, the team that goes up 3-0 ends up going on and advancing to the Stanley Cup final, or if they're in the Stanley Cup finals round as well, Luis. So you go down 3-0, you need to make history. And that's what the Canes are dealing with right now. An absolute must-win game tonight.
Well, I mean, and sure, it's obviously the most important game of the Canes season so far, but I don't know how much more Rod Brind'Amour can do. They're in this situation where they have the opportunities. They are getting a lot of shots on goal. Some of them placement could be a little bit better, obviously. Especially in game 2, it kind of felt like a lot of the shots were just kind of hitting Bobrovsky in the chest, not really making him having to do a whole lot. They have to capitalize on the power play more. I think 2-9, I want to say, in this series after starting really well in game 1 in the power play. But they're still just in a situation where the opportunities are there. What Brind'Amour was saying on Sunday before they left for sunrise was that when you coach, you're looking at creating opportunities. And if there are not opportunities being created, that's when you need to make adjustments. But the problem is they're creating a lot of opportunities. They're just not finishing those opportunities. You can pinpoint specific ones throughout the course of the past 2 games, whether it's been a puck going off the crossbar or just on the inside. But a big part of it is Bobrovsky is just standing on his head. He has been so good. He's been a cheat code for the Panthers. You had a team that was down 2-0 earlier in the postseason in the New Jersey Devils. They were down 2-0 to the Rangers, and they came back and won that series. But the difference is you have far and away the best goalie in the playoffs on the opposite side. I think it's 17 saves above expected right now. It's crazy. Freddie Anderson is like number 3 on that list. Mm-hmm. But the difference from Sergei Bobrovsky to number 2 on that list is like 11 or 8, 9, 10, 11 goals, or saves. Yeah. So that's what's so difficult right now for the Panthers, or for the Hurricanes. I did it. We were saying before the podcast, we are going to confuse the Carolina Panthers and the Florida Panthers at some point in time. That's on me. But that's what's so tough is no matter how well you're doing, you have that wall in front of the net right now, and you just gotta make it as hard as possible on them.
Game 2, when the Panthers end up winning 2-1. Canes had 38 shots on goal. Panthers only had 24. And I'm watching that first period, Lewis, and the Canes led 1-0 after the first period. They had 20 shots on goal. It was a dominant first period, but it was when the goal got waved off, and it was just like, man, is this going to end up coming to bite the Canes? And in the long run, it did. And they were even saying on the broadcast after the second period, before the third period, they're saying, like, if this is going to come down to a 1-goal game, you can't help but think that that gives the Panthers an advantage. And listen, I'm not one to make a lot of requests, but I have one for game 3 at the Hurricanes tonight. Matthew Tkachuk, can we make sure he doesn't score an overtime goal? We could have a game end in regulation, and I don't want to see him scoring a goal in overtime. It's just my one request, Lewis.
That's the issue, is that Matt Tkachuk is just the best player on the ice, not named Sergei Bobrovsky right now. And he picks his poison. I'm not going to lie. After that second game, that overtime goal, the send it off where he just kind of skates straight to the exit and just kind of like, waves everyone home. That was pretty nice. That was a good celebration and all of that. But no, I mean, he is 6'2", 205 and 100 plus points in the regular season. Like he's just a dominant player. And he has obviously been a problem for the Canes, but it's been like the little things. In game 1, you had a bunch of shots that just bounced off the crossbar for the Canes. It goes to 4 overtimes. Obviously, you have the power play in the third overtime that you don't capitalize on. That would have been the opportunity for the Canes to finish things. And then in game 2, talking to Jacob Slavin after the game, his stick got caught in Brent Burns' skate. And because of that, they essentially kind of like did a little 360 trying to skate over in overtime to get in front of the play just going on in front of the net, and you get a wide open shot, an easy opportunity for them to set up Tkachuk for that little tap and that rebound. It's very tough because of the margins and how tight they've been. But what Brind'Amour was saying on Sunday was you can't change just for the sake of changing. You have to change for reasons, and they are doing what they want to do, but it's just the Panthers are doing it a little bit better, and the Panthers are just finding those opportunities. So, it's tough. It is a tough position the Canes are in. It is not impossible to overcome this, but it is a tough position to be in.
Lewis, when you were in the building at PNC Arena heading into all the overtime periods, so game 1, you had 4, game 2, there was only 1, but were there still a ton of fans there, even though it was like 2 a.m. in the morning? What was the atmosphere like there at the arena?
The atmosphere was still great. I mean, I think it's in game 2, as they got into overtime, you could tell people were getting a little nervous, like, oh no, here we go again. But no, I mean, atmosphere was still great. Fans were awesome.
It looked packed. It looked packed.
It was.
Still.
No, it was. Oh yeah, no, absolutely. Game 1, it was getting so late. Like, I mean, I think the Tkachuk goal in game 1 happened right around like 1:30 in the morning. And at that point, like, you could feel just the exhaustion watching the Canes and the Panthers on the ice. Like, they were so out of juice. Everyone was exhausted. Everything was staying to the outside. It felt like people were just barely standing up. I mean, I can't even imagine. I was exhausted and I wasn't even on the ice or anything like that. The fans, I think, were in a similar situation. To me, that was the big thing coming out of game 1 going into game 2 was if the Panthers, stealing that game in 4 overtimes, is that going to be the kind of thing that just absolutely just wipes the Canes? And it didn't. They rebounded well. It was a tight game. They should have gotten that win in game 2, but they didn't capitalize on those opportunities like we've been saying. So now it's like, okay, what is the response from this? The Panthers are 2-3 at home in the postseason so far this year. They've picked up 3 road wins in each of their first 2 series. So they've got 2 already in this one now. So you can beat the Panthers at home. Like that is very, very possible. So if you're in a situation here where you're the Canes, I mean, easier said than done, obviously, but if you can get 2 wins in Sunrise, then all of us, and go back to PNC and it's 2-2, all of a sudden it's like, hey, we're starting over best of 3. But I think game 3 will be everything. You gotta get at Sergei Bobrovsky early and often. Make him work for it. Don't just make those saves nice and easy in the breadbasket.
Yeah, or get a ricochet goal, Lewis. And for the Canes in goal, it's going to be Freddie Anderson tonight. So they had Ronta in goal for the second game, and it just goes on and on and on and on and on. And so they're going to go back to Anderson tonight. I cannot wait to see how all of this unfolds. But I think you're spot on there where it's like when it's the opportunities, if there were a lack thereof opportunities to be one thing, but you got to put the puck in the net at the end of the day at some point in time.
Yeah, exactly. And Freddie's played really well. Like Freddie has been one of the top goalies in this postseason as well. Antti Ranta also phenomenal at home.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I think it was this game was like just his second loss at home in the past like 7 or 8 games, I think. So I mean, he was dominant at PNC this season. So it's you've got 2 good goalkeepers, for the Canes, but Sergei Bobrovsky is a cheat code, truly.
Well, check out our pregame coverage during the evening newscasts on WRAL. So newscast starting, they go from 4 to 6:30 and then again at 7 o'clock too. So if you need to get ready for tonight's game before flipping over to TNT, we're going to have you covered there.
You can also listen on 99.9 The Fan, and Casey Hintz and Pat Welter will be there in Sunrise, Florida, for the whole shebang.
Lewis, we're going to go from the ice to the gridiron.
Panthers to Panthers.
Hopefully. Yes. Listen, you're not the only one who gets goofed up about that. Need different mascots' names. Wofford College, Lewis, biggest storylines is the Panthers start OTAs. And the obvious choice is the quarterback battle. When will Bryce Young become the starter, splitting wet reps with Andy Dalton? Let's get this out of the way right away. When Young becomes the starter, Andy Dalton's going to be one of the best backups in the NFL. Now, Dalton, who's 35 years old, signed a 2-year deal with the team in the offseason, started out as QB1, got the first reps overall, but then they got Bryce Young into the mix today, and I notice how he gets more of the reps than Dalton, even though Dalton was the starter. Quickly, Lewis, just what do you think about all this? I mean, we're going to talk about this between now and September. Go ahead. The floor is yours.
This is where my pessimist, my cynical sports fan nature comes out. It's OTAs. Like what Frank Reich said, people were not getting on the ground, which is good. We want to keep people off the ground. That's everything you need to know. Mm-hmm. Like they don't want people to get hurt. More than anything, it's like the installing segments of these OTAs, right? Where you are teaching the offense, teaching the defense, the new people to those that might need it. And remember, this is a brand new staff coming in, so you have a lot of information that you have to bring to the equation. I mean, even Andy Dalton being 35, starting as the getting the first snaps in OTA at quarterback, he hasn't played under Frank Reich before, so this is a new system that he's having to learn as well. I think it's interesting them getting the reps. Reich was very complimentary of Young, of all the quarterbacks really, but of Young, saying he had great command of the offense when he was in there. He talked a little bit about Matt Corral and only having 3 quarterbacks right now, so that Matt Corral can get more snaps as well. It's just part of the equation. If the Panthers have learned anything over the past couple of years during these downtimes, it's that you have to have depth. You have to be ready for injuries, especially when it comes to the quarterback position. So if you can have, people who can come in and play capable snaps behind Bryce Young when he assumedly becomes the starter in the fall, I think that goes a long way. Yeah, I mean, it's the easy talking point at quarterback, like you said. But what are your thoughts? Do you have anything? Do you have any Andy Dalton slander throughout there, Mark?
No.
I'll come fight you. I will.
I want to know how long. I want to know how long the honeymoon period lasts between Reich, between Bryce Young. I mean, I'm looking at the quote today saying that he has complete control and poise of the offense. Frank Reich on talking about Bryce Young. 10 out of 10 on day one, just complete command, control, poise. How long does that last? And look, I get you're shaking your head here.
I mean, it's going to last the entirety of Frank Reich's tenure in Charlotte. Like, when you pick a quarterback number 1, you're locked to him. That's your guy.
All right.
If he's bad, you're out. You're probably not the
Let
head
me
coach
say
there
this,
anymore.
though, too, and this might frustrate some Panthers fans, but if Andy Dalton is the week one starter, there seems to be continuity, and this is how you have success in the league. A lot easier said than done. When you have and are on the same page with ownership, with your general manager, with your head coach, with your quarterback. If you have stability in those four areas, you're going to have success as a team and as a franchise. They seem to be on the same wavelength, at least so far. Again, just OTAs. So we'll see how long this lasts, Lewis.
Yeah, I mean, if Andy Dalton ends up starting for the Panthers, at the very beginning of the season, it's not the end of the world. Like there have
Mm.
been plenty of situations over the past couple of years where a veteran has started for a rookie before a rookie starts coming in. Kenny Pickett last year being the prime example of that. Justin Herbert technically did not start the season. It was Tyrod Taylor who started week one for the Chargers and then got his lung punctured by the medical folks, and then Justin Herbert came in and it's kind of been history from there. So I mean, if like Andy is starting at the beginning of the season, it's not the end of the world. It's ultimately like the Panthers, what do they want? They want success. They want to win the NFC South. They've said plenty of times that they think they can do that this year, that they can win the NFC South, and so they're going to do what's going to put them in the best position. So.
Couple position groups I want to talk about, Lewis, biggest storylines. And speaking of Bryce Young and Andy Dalton, who's catching the ball from them? Wide receiver 3. So you've got Adam Thielen, you've got DJ Chark, 2 players the Panthers signed in the offseason. So Jonathan Mingo, the team's second round pick, Terrace Marshall. That is a battle I can't wait to watch. And I don't think it hurts to have 4 capable receivers, but you'd imagine Thielen and Chark are going to get most of the reps as your receiver X, your Y receiver as well. But who that third receiver is, who you want to put in the slot, or if you want to move one of the 2 starters into the slot when you bring a third receiver on the field, whether it's Marshall, whether it's Mingo, something I'm watching here with OTAs and really on into training camp.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting what kind of personnel grouping the Panthers really lean on with this this new offense. Will there be more 2 tight end sets? Are they going to be having 3 wide receivers out there consistently? Like, what's that going to look like? The one thing with Thielen and Chark, as of lately, there have been some more injury concerns with them. So I think you do have to be ready for depth. Jonathan Mingo has really impressed so far from everything I've read in OTAs, rookie minicamp, and all of that stuff. It's going to be really interesting to see what they do with him. We've talked about this before. Frank Reich really mentioned kind of like almost having like a package of plays for him where you can really take advantage of what he brings to the table after the catch. And that's kind of quarterback that Bryce Young is. He's the guy who's going to hit the receiver exactly where they need to be so that they can take a hitch and go 60 yards with it. You know what I mean? Yeah, well, I love wide receiver group position battles. Wide receiver is one of my favorite positions, just in general, in football. Terrace Marshall, I think there were a lot more expectations for him coming out of college at LSU than we've seen. And he showed flashes last year. Having the quarterback play that the Panthers have had in the past few years, I'm sure didn't help his development. So I'm curious to see if he can take that next step. And show kind of the potential that a lot of people saw from him coming out of LSU. So that's the one guy in particular that I'm like, show me what you got. I'm intrigued.
Well, with Terrace Marshall as well, you see what Justin Jefferson's doing. You see what Jamar Chase is doing. And it's like, can't we get another stud LSU receivers down in Charlotte, Lewis?
Listen, don't get too greedy. That whole LSU team, I mean, they were so good.
Loaded.
Loaded. If Terrace Marshall were to turn into another one of those caliber wide receivers, I'd say just that it puts the all question marks aside on if that LSU team would be the best college football team of all time. But yeah, the wide receiver grouping is going to be interesting because you got rid of DJ Moore, and you got to see how you replicate that kind of production. I'm intrigued.
All right. If people are still watching at this point, this is where we get to talk about the big uglies up front, the offensive line. How do you temporarily replace starting right guard Austin Corbett? Because you draft Chandler Zavala, 114th overall pick in the 4th round. He played left guard mostly at NC State. So then you also got Cade Mays on the roster, a 6th-round pick from last year's draft. That's going to be a really important position because you got to keep, if it's Bryce Young, whether it's Andy Dalton, you got to keep them upright from the interior. So how the Panthers going to go about doing that? Something else I've got my eye on in terms of the position battles.
So it's interesting because following some of the kind of offensive line people, if you will, on Twitter and how they assess offensive line play and stuff like that. Offensive line is one of those groups that I feel like has suffered a bit from the lack of contact in camps and things like this leading up to the regular season. So yeah, that's definitely intriguing because the Panthers are going to need to have a good offensive line. There are very few teams in general that are going to have success without a good offensive line. And you especially with Bryce Young and what he is. I mean, let's be real, he is small. So you need to protect him. To me, one of the highlights of like a rookie quarterback's their first year is you have to make sure you keep them confident and keep them upright. We see it too often where a young quarterback that gets hit too much early on, they struggle. They start to quote Sam Darnold, they start seeing ghosts out there, and so that's what you want to avoid. But I do think the Panthers are in a good position with their offensive line. It's just going to be about health and depth at this point. And I think they're in a good position to have success both pass blocking and run blocking.
Yeah, and I think with the guard position specifically as well, you're talking A gap, B gap. So between center and guard, between guard and tackle, that's the fastest way to a quarterback. So you want to make sure that Young keeps his confidence early on in his career, especially because he's undersized. So he's going to get sacked at some point this season, but you want to keep him clean and upright as often as possible if you're going to rely on him to drop back 30, maybe 40 times in a football game.
Bryce Young's a playmaker. Like he is going to try and extend plays. He's going to try and do what he can to, hit those home runs on every single play. One of the big things I'm looking for early on in his career in the NFL is, does that processing time continue to get faster? And does he understand the notion of getting a single or a double instead of hitting a home run, to use that cross sporting reference there? Because there are going to be times where, hey man, you got to stay on rhythm of the play, get the ball out quick, do all of that, because if you don't, you're going to get hurt. I'm a Bengals guy. I mention that all the time. So Joe Burrow is the prime example of this. Year 1 and year 2, that's part of the reason why he took so many sacks, is he would not get rid of the ball fast enough. He was a playmaker. And so you have to speed up that processing ability and that decision making. Sometimes that means that you're going to have to settle for, on first down, picking up 4 yards on a quick slant or on an out or finding your check down or something along those lines. You can't always hit that home run. So it's going to take a little bit of back and forth. But I think especially in his first year, the Panthers may have to protect Bryce Young from himself just a little bit.
Absolutely, Lewis. Last thing I've got too, and this is transitioning from a 4-3 defense to a 3-4 defense, is who is opposite Brian Burns. Now in the draft, the Panthers get Oregon edge rusher DJ Johnson in the 3rd round. Some people felt that was a little bit of a reach. You got a new defensive coordinator coming in. Marquise Haynes also is a player last season who got into the mix for the Panthers. So we know what Burns brings to the table. One of the best edge rushers in all of the NFL, player that we say this almost every week when we talk about the Panthers, Lewis. They could have gotten 2 first-round picks for him a season ago. So that speaks to his ability. But who is opposite of him? Who can eat when Burns commands a double team from an opposing team's offensive line? Who's the guy opposite him who can take advantage of a one-on-one matchup? That's something else as well that I'm looking at OTAs, training camp, and once we get into the preseason, Lewis.
And exactly. And when we talk about install and, making sure you understand the playbook, you understand what's going on, this is a prime time to be doing that. So I don't think anyone is going to win that position at this moment in the OTAs, but this is where you start to see who is digesting what the new defensive scheme is and who's asking the questions, who's putting in the effort for it. So that is like the new defensive scheme in OTAs. That's going to be one of those things that is, yes, this is an important time for learning all of that. So that is one of the things where I'm like, yes, OTAs important. Important. Okay.
To the ball diamond, where this week the ACC Baseball Tournament gets underway at the DBAP. Lewis, I am fired up because your boy is going to be boots on the ground out in Durham tomorrow afternoon to see it in the flesh. So for today's activity, though, Lewis, because we've got all the ACC action here in Durham, what I thought we would do is once you get your concessions, once you get your popcorn and your soda and your beer and your corn on the cob and a hot dog and whatever it is that you like at a baseball game, you might be a nacho guy, Lewis. Who are the players that stick out that you should want to watch this weekend? So I've got a list of a few of them. Lewis, I cannot wait to see this in person. It's going to be great as we get closer and closer to see which teams are going to be in the College World Series in Omaha, Nebraska here in several weeks.
Sure. For the record, I am a hot dog and beer kind of guy.
Okay.
No offense to like nachos, but they need to be the good kind of nachos that have like a lot of toppings, not like the ones where it's literally just, hey, here's a bag of circular tortilla chips and some like hot cheese. Yeah, no, I mean, ACC baseball is always exciting. It's a good time. And the weather, by the way, at the DBAP this week is supposed to be glorious. It's supposed to be really nice, like classic kind of May weather. So everyone go out and enjoy it. I'm sure it's going to be a good time. What's standing out to you, Mark, initially?
Let me go with three players that I've got, and I'm going to start with the Conference Player of the Year, Max Wagner, Clemson third baseman, and this dude just mashes home runs. Second in the country, 26 home runs this season. So if you got one player that you need to watch, if you happen to be at Clemson's game, pay attention to when he's at the plate because he can knock one out of the park whenever he steps to the plate, Lewis.
Okay, very good, very good. Who's second on your list?
Let me go with the local kid, Vance Honeycutt. And I hope that we get to see him play because he's missed several games in a row now with a lower body injury. I don't know the extent of his injury, but he's coming off last season when he was a freshman, a 25-25 season. That is rare at the collegiate level as well. And so this is a top prospect for the 2024 MLB draft. He's an outfielder for the Tar Heels. I'm hoping we get to see him play. Again, don't know the extent of his lower body injury, but someone who is a heralded prospect and someone who 25-25, you have a 5-tool prospect, someone who can hit for power and then can fly around on the base paths as well.
And wrap it up. Number 3.
All right, here. Let me go. It's hard to choose just 3, but Nick Kurtz out of Wake Forest plays first base and he plays outfield. He is also a top prospect for the 2024 draft. Some people think he might be the best hitter in that class and someone who also knows how to knock it out of the park. 21 home runs for the Wake Forest player as well. So Nick Kurtz, again, first base and outfield for Wake Forest, Lewis. Those are the 3 that I would watch.
Wake Forest being the number 1 team in the country, their whole season has been really phenomenal to watch. So that's good. That's going to be exciting. I mean, and when you look at like projections, I think the most recent D1 projections I saw for just the ACC and regionals in general, I think essentially once you get to about the 8th seed at Notre Dame, those are about the teams that, like, I feel like, yeah, those 1 through 8 are the teams that look like they're going to have a pretty solid chance of making it to the regionals. And then it gets a little bit tricky from there. Instead of going players, I'm going to give you a pool to watch. So for those of you that don't know, the ACC baseball, it's a baseball tournament championship. It's about pool play. All right. So you have the top 12 teams in regular season making the conference tournament. And then you have 4 pools with 3 teams in each pool. Throughout the course of the week, each pool will play every other team in the pool. So pool A, for example, Wake Forest will play Notre Dame and Pitt. Notre Dame will play Wake Forest and Pitt. Pitt will play Wake Forest and Notre Dame. The team with the best record will advance the winner of the pool, essentially. In case of a tie, the team with the highest seed moves on. So once all of those are decided, then you have a 4-team single elimination tournament. So once the pool play is done, you have semifinals and then finals, and then that's it. I think the pool to watch for here that I think is going to be a little bit chaotic, a little bit fun, especially from a local triangle perspective, is Pool D. Miami, Duke, NC State. NC State has not had the season they have wanted from a baseball perspective. So if they want to make The NCAA, if they want to make a regional somewhere, they're going to need a deep run here in this play. Plus, only one team can advance from each pool. So that means that Duke or NC State probably going to eliminate each other in some way here. They play the very first day, Tuesday at 7 o'clock. And UNC will play Georgia Tech on Tuesday as well at 3:30. So from a local triangle perspective, I think that's going to be the really fun one. There have been some really good just ACC baseball tournament championship games. So I'm excited to see how all of it turns out, Mark. But, a lot of good players in the ACC. It's going to be interesting to see how it all unfolds.
Yeah, the great Ernie Banks used to say, "Let's play two." We got a triple header on Tuesday, Lewis. So I can't wait. It's all gonna get underway at the DBAT, and then all week long, if you want to watch on TV, we'll obviously be out there with 99.9 The Fan, Lewis, but then on TV as well. If you want to watch the games themselves, ACC Network, and then Sunday's championship game is going to be on ESPN2 as well. So I can't wait. And I can't believe we're already into the conference tournaments. The season is flying by. A lot of fun. There's a lot of good young talent at the collegiate level among all the ACC schools.
Couldn't have said it better myself, Mark.
Any final thoughts here, Lewis, before we sign off?
Just excited that it's the end of May and, regionals right around the corner. Oh, shout out to Duke softball. They won against Charlotte. They went undefeated in their regional play. Campbell losing in their region. Charlotte actually beat Campbell and eliminated them. But shout out to Duke softball. They are going to a super regional for just the second time as a program. It's a really young program, but it's just the first time that they will ever host a super regional. So number 8 Duke will host number 9 Stanford later this week in the super regional in Durham.
Great to see the triangle teams doing their thing, Lewis. I'll go ahead and sign off for the both of us. For Lewis Fernandez, I'm Mark Bergin. Thank you for watching WRAL Triangle and Two. Tap that subscribe button. Feel free to give us a 5-star review wherever you're listening to your podcast. We'll see you next time. Until then, take care. So long, everybody.